I once fostered a child who had genetic problems, and the father, who was a very well known person, very educated, very well to do, he said they couldn't keep the child because it was a stigma in their family name. And he said, with a stigma in our family name, and nobody will marry all the other children in our family. And for that reason, they gave the child away. And the thing is that there's a stigma attached to it. Our first line of education will be being different is not a stigma. And that's where all of us, in our own little way, where we can deal with the fact that being different is not a stigma.
Adopting a child is almost always looked at as a plan B. And when it comes to choosing to adopt a child with special needs, most do not even consider it to be an option. Are you having problems conceiving? Are you sure you want to do this? You'll have to go through so much, and it's not even your own child. Don't you want a child that can fulfill your dreams instead of being a burden on you? Society's prescription of a perfect child with regard to gender, skin color, ability is indeed callous and discriminatory. Why is it so difficult to think of a child beyond his disability? Let's break the stigma, shall we?
I've had the experience where before we adopted Abhi, I had to go to a list of doctors and talk to them about my son's condition, my prospective son's condition. I hadn't yet adopted him. So I went to a neurosurgeon who's pretty well known in the city, met up with him. And the first thing he does is he looks at my medical report and starts to thumb through all of those pages. And I was kind of waiting to see why is he doing that. Gave him a minute. And then after that, he looked up at me and said, do you have problems conceiving? I was like, yes, okay, yes. Why don't you go and consult a specialist? So he gave me this unsolicited gynecological advice, which was not his terrain at all. And then I waited for a while because I wanted to respect his profession. I said, Doctor, what are you trying to get? He's like, see, you're going to bring home a person who's completely disabled from the torso below. And he used these words, I'll quote him. He's going to be a vegetable. And you're going to have to care for him all the time. And you will not have a life.
Our own pediatrician, when we wanted to adopt our daughter, we had already adopted our son. And then we went to the same doctor. Our daughter was preterm baby, so she was very, very fragile and very, very weak. The doctor advised, please don't adopt this child. The child is really very, very weak. So somewhere the doctors also believe that if you're adopting, adopt a healthy child.
I remember when I took my child to a doctor after I brought her home, the first thing he said was, why do you want to adopt a child that looks like this? And I said, why? Not that looks. He said, why do you want to adopt a child that is like this? And I said to him, you tell me why I shouldn't adopt a child that looks like this or is like this. And of course, I got really mad and I read him the right act. So there's a perception that only healthy children are worthy of being in your family, or healthy or perfect or whatever you want to call it. I think there's a certain line of education which says that's not anybody else's business. A doctor gives advice. This is the condition, this child has this kind of a condition, and this is what the long-term treatment will be, this is how it will be. And then the couple takes a decision to adopt or not to adopt. It's not the physician or the lawyer. So then it's a mindset that if you have any kind of a special need in some kind of stupid way, you're an inferior human being. It's like my daughter said in her talk.
Very often, if a doctor finds out that you have a genetic condition before the birth, it is advised that the pregnancy be terminated. And as if these children don't have the right or place among us.
It's a mindset. If a mother takes that decision, it's another thing. But to say that you must take that decision because this is how it is, I think that's impinging on someone's right to decide what they really believe.
So there has to be some sort of sensitization that needs to happen with doctors, with the medical community, and also with counselors. So that's why I said adoption doesn't work in silos. All of us cannot work in silo and think that we are going to change everything in the system. We need to bring everybody in it, together. We need the support system, the medical, the counselors, the parents, the government, bodies, uh, all working in tandem. And that's when you're going to see a change.
But the moment the child steps to the outside world, the child seeks similar assurance from the teachers, from the doctors, from friends, from neighborhood, and that's where the challenges start coming in. So we realized that there was a gap in the ecosystem, and we thought, why don't we create a platform where we bring these various stakeholders together? So that was the ideology. The whole idea of setting up Families of Joy was that adoption is not just a dialogue between a child and the parent, it's actually a dialogue with the entire society.
Inclusion, of course, like starts from home. Like that's what we have to do. That's the reason we have taken a small step towards it. But it is also the entire ecosystem which has to come forward for it. Is of course like government is trying to make initiatives, but I feel like there's a lot more initiatives that like that people like us can also make towards it, because like we're also part of the ecosystem, right? Like we can slowly. There's a lot of things in which like you can educate the corporates, educate your people, because sometimes they may be ignored about these things, like they will not be knowing about it.
So the entire conversation depends upon what should the parent do. Should the parent tell? Should the parent adopt? Should the parent take the child? Whatever it is. We are reversing it. What should the child do? What should the child perceive? So when the child goes to a school in grade 1 and child says, I was adopted or I am adopted, the teacher says, oh, the response of the teacher as oh punctures the confidence of the child. The child, without any further statement, teacher has just said oh, but the child sees there must be something wrong in it, and that is where the child starts building the identity. Now the teacher has a very important role in it. To me, it's a social issue. If your teacher is not trained or sensitized, how should they respond and how should they enable a child when adoption comes up in the classroom? It is not just about that child. It is about 30 other children whom you are educating, that how this child is very much part of your community.
All the teachers are required to do B.Ed to handle any child. So we have so many special children in different categories, whether it is only with learning disabilities or neurological disabilities, child from birth, any difficulties or physical challenges, anything. But teachers are not equipped with their training. We're like happy if or any kind of B.Ed gets inclusive of 1 semester of special needs. It is let it be a glimpse, not detailed one, but they'll be knowing which child they are facing at least. They'll be aware of what kind of child they are going to meet.
So his class 9 and 10 he did from St. Joseph's, and I will have to give credit to the principal of the school at that time. He allowed this child to be integrated with normal children, and boys of that class, their class used to be on the 2nd floor. Realizing that Dheeraj has to be carried, he shifted the class to the 1st floor.
So my son is in the VBS and he's disabled from the torso below, so he cannot stand, he cannot use his legs. So there's a time for singing, and basically someone says, all of you please stand for the action songs. My son just kind of looks at me with a sad face. It took me a couple of seconds to actually process what was happening. He felt excluded because obviously he can't stand. So then what has to happen? Now, I can't blame what the others are doing because they've not been sensitized and they haven't realized that there's a child here who's left out because of that, what is said. So I had to take this person aside and say, hey, you know what? Maybe you can add this sentence. Anyone who wants to stand can stand, and anyone who wants to sit can sit. Leaves a choice with the children. So my son feels like he's not excluded.
The more important thing that I would like to emphasize will be on the certification part. Like you need to have certified professionals to work rather than like just people, amateur people like working with people, because it doesn't make a difference, right? You need to have qualified people who are being trained to work with children, to handle children. Because at the end of the day, I always say that you don't work with machines, you work with children. You do a mistake, you cannot unlearn it back. It's quite difficult to do that, right? So better like you get your certifications before you work with children. You have the proper knowledge, have the proper hands-on experience, have the required amount of training that you need to work with children.
I remember when I was a kid, my next door neighbor, one of the kids in my apartment, the apartment next door to mine, was a child with mental retardation. And I still remember when this child used to come out to play, there'll only be a couple of things the child would do. She would hit her head on the railing which is there, and she would shout and cry. And at the time when this child comes out, all our parents, all our relatives would basically say, run into your house and hide. So the mad kid is out. That's the culture I grew up in, where a child with a mental retardation basically is to be avoided. Somebody's scared of them, that they're going to do something to them.
I wish Kara would do is that they would do a lot of sensitization and awareness campaigns about special needs children with the legal system, with the magistrates who hear specific adoption related cases, with advocates who work on adoption cases mostly. I think there is a huge need for them to understand the medical complexities of these challenges so that they are a little bit more empathetic to parents who are adopting these children.
The way the case is presented in the judiciary is more like the parents are really in need of a kid, or they are really sad about they cannot have
We
kids.
told them to change,
Yeah.
but still they didn't.
They said like, this is the way you present your case in the judiciary, and that's how your case gets strong.
Why can't you write that these parents, financially stable,
They want to
have a
adopt.
family?
Right.
Why you have to mention they can't have kids? Or then again you are bringing that stigma, like those who can't are having kids.
So it is more like option B for most of the cases. So you are presenting it in the similar manner. So if we were married for 1 year and we wanted to adopt, so can't we do that?
In terms of what the shelters and the agencies can do, one of the things that I have seen is, and perhaps it's lack of training, the children's homes and agencies, they don't know how to highlight children. So if you have a special need child, fine, you can say that the child has a missing limb, or the child has cerebral palsy, or the child has hearing issues. But at the same time, it's a real life child. Talk about other things about the child. How the child loves to laugh, how the child plays, how the child is friendly, how the kid is helpful to all the other kids, right? Like, bring about something more about the personality of the child.
Often their identity is so wrapped up in their disability that's how you look at them. Okay, this is blind. I remember reading reports that say deaf, mute, blind. This is what I read. This is what the reports, that's all they said about them. I'm just looking at the pictures saying, okay, tell me something more about this child. What does she like to do? How does she cope? What are the things she does? Nothing. Because you have looked at the disability of that child as the primary identity. Now, I'm not saying it's not part of their identity, it is. You can't erase that off. But that's not all there is to that.
Now people are like broadening the horizons and looking at, the larger picture of adoption. And this has taken a while for this to happen. This, mind shift has happened over a decade. It didn't just happen suddenly. Likewise, I think special needs adoption is going to take a while, and what also as a country do we offer for special needs? In terms of infrastructure, in terms of inclusiveness in schools, the kind of educators that we have, how well trained they are to cope with, the needs of the special needs children,
We made a proposition to Kara some time back, and we said currently Kara just dumps the profiles. So there are healthy children in the database, and there are so-called special needs children. And in the database, they simply show something like out of 2,000 children, I believe 1,000 children available in the pool are with a special need. And the parents simply don't look at database. It belongs to a different category for them because they are categorized as a problem statement. Now, if you filter that out, and I have myself seen the profile of many of those children, I would easily say 10 to 15% of those children can be very easily accepted into the mainstream and adopted.
Okay, they can only probably open up a basket of options in special needs, and then you can, which is what they've done, I think, right now. And, I've categorized it. What I would think is probably move, certain needs which are actually not really special needs into the immediate placement, like chronic eczema or asthma or cleft lip, rickets, these conditions can be easily managed, and probably they don't need to be in the special needs category.
I think the system is very streamlined and it's very transparent. I think what could be done more for special needs kids is highlight them better. They are right now a tab or a list that nobody may look at, right? So when somebody is waiting 2 years for a child, highlight the special needs kids, send them a reminder email, send them a text message, tell them about, hey, by the way, have you checked out the special needs list recently? And just tell people about it. Highlight stories of families who have adopted kids with special needs. They're not shy. What I know about kids, families who have adopted kids with special needs is that they're very vocal. I'm one of them. So, do what you're doing, right? Make short videos, make stories, have them have write-ups. Share that with every single one of the waiting parents. If there are 20,000 people waiting, send them videos of families with kids with special needs. Send them write-ups, send them essays. Maybe 10 of them will change their mind. Maybe 10 of them will adopt a child with special needs. That's 10 more families for kids with special needs.
He's saying that कमी नाम की कोई चीज़ नहीं होती है.
The world looks more beautiful to me from my daughter's eyes, now, which is so unjaded, and her love is so unconditional.
Does a person with special needs have a mind? Do they think? Do they feel? People don't realize that. They think that if you have special needs of any kind, if you look different, if you act different, that means you can't feel, you can't think, you're not a person in the full sense of the word. And I think our dream is to make people understand that no matter how, it's our differences that make us interesting. It's our differences that make us aware of each other. After all, like I said earlier, the essence of who I believe I am is love. And the essence of love is relationship. And if you have love and relationship, there are no differences.
I would say that just go ahead and adopt. The world rallies around in your support.